Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever felt that pull, between chasing your dreams and needing love and connection?
hmm
That's kind of what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah.
A biography. Pretty insightful, kind of heartbreaking, honestly.
Okay.
So get ready to explore the life of Robert Frost,
Oh, yeah.
the American poet, through the lens of love and need, the biography by Adam Plunkett. You can find a link to that in the description below on Amazon. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future deep dives with us. We're going to be exploring how Frost's kind of turbulent personal life fueled his amazing poetry. And I think by the end, you just might see his work in a whole new light.
Yeah, it's really striking that we so often associate Frost with the tranquility of nature.
Right?
But his life, it was anything but peaceful. And Plunkett's biography really reveals this constant push and pull between Frost's ambition, this deep need for love, and the tragedies that really shaped him.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Starting with his early life, he grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, kind of an industrial city.
Far cry from those rural settings we think
Yeah,
of.
exactly.
Yeah.
His father, William, was a journalist, had some political aspirations, quite contrast to his mother, Belle, who was a teacher known for her gentle nature and really deep spirituality. I imagine that created a pretty interesting dynamic at home.
Absolutely. And that duality, it's mirrored in Frost himself. You see that tension between ambition, perhaps inherited from his father, and this yearning for a deeper, more spiritual connection.
Right.
And his mother really nurtured that in him. It's also crucial to remember Belle's influence on his love of literature, especially the classics. She's the one who introduced him to Greek and Roman works, really shaping his understanding of language and laying the foundation for his poetic voice.
Yeah, it seems like that early exposure to the classics really stayed with him. Now let's talk about Eleanor. The book depicts their relationship as pretty intense.
Oh, yeah.
Shared love of poetry, obviously, that drew them together. But there were also periods of separation. And, from what Plunkett suggests, some pretty strong emotions at play.
Yeah, for sure. And those emotions, they're palpable in his early poems, especially My Butterfly and Twilight. They read almost like love letters to Eleanor, expressing this longing for a connection that goes way beyond just the physical.
Right.
But they also hint at insecurity, jealousy, revealing the vulnerability beneath the surface of their relationship.
That's interesting because, while those poems are super personal, they also tap into these feelings of longing, the complexities of love. So he's drawing on these very personal experiences, but making them relatable to anyone who's ever felt that kind of deep yearning.
Exactly. And as he matured as a poet, you start to see a shift away from the more idealized language of those romantic poets like Shelley, who clearly influenced him early on. He begins to embrace a more realistic, grounded style.
Yeah.
Reflecting the complexities of human experience, both in his personal life and in the world around him.
And that shift coincides with a major change in his life. The move to Derry, New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah.
Those farming years, they were marked by hardship, financial struggles.
Tragedy.
Yeah. And yet, amidst all those challenges, some of his most iconic poems emerged.
Yeah.
Mowing, The Tuft of Flowers, work so deeply connected to nature and rural life. It really makes you wonder if that difficult period, it almost fueled his creativity.
That's a fascinating question. The move to Derry, it was more than just a change of scenery, right? It was a retreat, conscious decision to simplify his life, reconnect with the natural world. And you see that, I think, reflected in his poetry from this period. There's this profound appreciation for the beauty of everyday life, the simple act of mowing a field, observing a bird. But there's also this lingering sense of loss and melancholy, perhaps echoing the complexities of his relationship with Eleanor, and the hardships that he faced.
It's like he found a way to channel those personal struggles into something universal.
Yeah.
Something that speaks to the human condition beyond, the specifics of his own life.
Absolutely. And it's that ability to connect the personal and the universal, the specific and the symbolic,
Right.
that makes his poetry so enduring. He takes these ordinary experiences and imbues them with this depth of meaning that resonates with readers across, generations.
Now, beyond his poetry, Frost was also a mentor.
Yeah.
He formed strong bonds with his students, fellow writers.
Yeah.
You get a sense from the biography that he was truly invested in nurturing their talent. What stands out to you about his approach to mentorship?
Well, it's intriguing, that Frost, who himself had struggled to find his own voice, He encouraged his students to embrace uncertainty in the creative process.
Oh, interesting.
He believed in muddling along, is what he called it, allowing for experimentation and discovery, rather than, imposing rigid rules or expecting immediate results.
So instead of providing a strict formula for writing poetry, he encouraged them to find their own path, learn through trial and error.
Right.
It seems like he understood that true creativity often emerges from a place of exploration and even struggle.
Exactly. And this connects to a broader theme in Frost's life and work, the idea that meaning emerges from specific lived experiences rather than abstract theories. He wasn't interested in imposing a grand narrative or prescribing a set of beliefs. He wanted his students to engage with the world around them, to find their own truths through observation, reflection, and of course through the act of writing itself.
It's fascinating how his personal journey, his own muddling along to find his poetic voice, shaped his approach to teaching.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he was saying, look, there's no easy answer, no shortcut to becoming a poet. You have to be willing to get lost, experiment, embrace the uncertainty of the creative process.
And I think that message resonates with anyone who's ever tried to create something, whether it's a poem, a painting, or even, a new business venture. There's this inherent risk involved, this need to step outside your comfort zone, embrace the unknown.
And speaking of stepping outside his comfort zone, let's talk about North of Boston, his first truly successful collection.
Oh, yeah.
This book was a game changer, finally bringing him the recognition he'd been working towards.
North of Boston marked a significant shift in Frost's career. It was no longer just about personal expression. It was about, entering the literary landscape and engaging with contemporary artistic movements,
Right.
solidifying his place as a major voice in American poetry.
And key figures like Ezra Pound, Edward Thomas,
Yeah.
they championed his work. They recognized that unique blend of realism, colloquial language, and that underlying psychological tension that resonated with modernist sensibilities.
Yeah. And it's crucial to understand the historical context here. Modernism was challenging traditional forms of expression. And Frost, while, rooted in traditional poetic structures, he found a way to bring a fresh, modern perspective to them. He took these familiar forms and infused them with the anxieties, the uncertainties, and the complexities of, modern life.
It's like he was bridging the gap between the old and the new, honoring tradition while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of what poetry could be. And his relationship with Pound, who was this champion of the avant-garde, it's particularly intriguing. They had very different approaches to poetry, yet they recognized each other's talents and formed a complex and sometimes even contentious bond.
It's almost like a classic mentor-student dynamic, where the student eventually, surpasses or diverges from the mentor's path.
Right.
Pound, with his emphasis on experimentation, breaking away from those traditional forms, played a crucial role in introducing Frost to a wider audience, helping him navigate the literary world. But ultimately, they had different visions for what poetry could be, and their relationship reflects those differences as much as it, reflects their mutual respect.
And it's fascinating to see how those contrasting styles played out.
Right.
Frost, who valued clarity and accessibility, and Pound, who embraced a more fragmented, elusive approach. It's almost like they represented two sides of that modernist coin.
Exactly. And their interactions, they reveal a lot about the tensions within modernism itself. The pull between tradition and innovation, between accessibility and experimentation.
And amidst all of this, with the growing recognition and the complexities of his literary relationships, Frost was still grappling with personal struggles.
Oh, yeah.
The death of his children, and later Eleanor, cast a long shadow over his life and work.
Yes, and it's in poems like Home Burial and Directive that we see the rawest, most heart-wrenching expressions of his grief. These poems are not simply about loss. They're about the struggle to make sense of loss, to find meaning and solace amidst, the wreckage.
They're incredibly powerful. And even though they're rooted in such personal pain, they manage to tap into something universal about the human experience of grief.
Yeah.
It's like he's giving voice to the unspoken,
Yeah.
to the things that are often too difficult to put into words.
And that's one of the remarkable things about Frost's poetry. He takes these intensely personal experiences and he transforms them into something that speaks to all of us, to our shared humanity,
Right.
to our capacity for both great love and profound loss.
And as his career progressed, that tension between his public persona and his private struggles,
Yeah.
between, the acclaim and the inner turmoil,
Yeah.
it became even more pronounced.
It raises this interesting question about the cost of artistic creation. Do you need a life of deep love and profound loss to create truly meaningful art?
Right.
Faust's life seems to suggest that those experiences, while shaping his work, also came at a huge personal cost.
It's a complex question, and one that we might not, have a definitive answer to. But what's clear is that Frost's life and work they're inextricably intertwined. You can't fully understand his poetry without understanding the man, the complexities of his relationships, the joys and sorrows that shaped his perspective.
And that's what makes this biography so valuable.
Yeah.
It provides us with, I think, a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped this iconic American poet. It allows us to see beyond, that familiar image of the nature poet and to appreciate the full range of his human experience, both the light and the shadow.
And it invites us to revisit his poems with a fresh perspective, to look for the traces of those experiences, those joys and sorrows that found their way into his words and continue to resonate with readers today.
Absolutely. It's like holding up a prism to his poetry, allowing us to see the full spectrum of colors,
Right.
the nuances and complexities that might have been hidden before.
So for our listeners, as we delve further into Frost's life and legacy, keep that in mind. Don't just listen to the words. Listen for the echoes of his experiences, for the whispers of his heart.
And consider how those experiences, those personal struggles and triumphs, shaped not only his poetry, but also his views on art, mentorship, and, the meaning of life itself. And one relationship that I think really highlights those complexities is Frost's dynamic with his daughter, Leslie.
Oh, interesting.
She was an aspiring writer herself, but, their relationship, as Plunkett portrays it, was quite strained.
Yeah.
Especially after Eleanor's passing.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even, literary giants are human, right?
Yeah.
With all the methy family dynamics that come with that. And for Leslie, trying to find her own voice while living in the shadow of such a towering figure
Right.
must have been incredibly challenging.
It really makes you ponder the legacy of creativity. Like, how is it passed down through generations? And what kind of burden, if any, does it carry? These are questions that Plunkett, I think, subtly raises throughout the biography.
I want to touch on some of the specific poems that really stood out in the book.
Yeah, let's do it.
Birches, for example,
Oh, great poem.
beautifully captures that yearning for escape, for return to like childhood innocence.
Yeah.
The image of swinging on birch trees
Mm-hmm.
becomes this powerful metaphor.
What's remarkable about Birches is how Frost takes such a simple image and infuses it with such profound emotion.
Right.
That act of swinging on birch trees becomes, symbolic of this desire to transcend the complexities of adulthood, to find solace in the simplicity of nature and memory.
And there's this sense of ambiguity, too. He acknowledges the allure of escape, but also the understanding that, one must eventually return to reality, to earth, as he puts it.
Exactly. It's not about rejecting the responsibilities of adulthood, but recognizing the importance of finding those moments of respite, of reconnecting with that childlike sense of wonder that can sometimes get lost amidst the demands of everyday life.
Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Another poem that struck me.
Oh, beautiful.
It's a seemingly simple scene, right?
Yeah.
A traveler pausing to admire the beauty of a snowy landscape. Yet there's so much more going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. There's this tension between the speaker's desire to linger in that moment of peace and beauty
Yeah.
and the awareness of obligations, the promises to keep, as he says, that pull him away.
Right.
It speaks to that universal feeling of wanting to savor a moment of tranquility,
Yeah.
even as we recognize the demands of life calling us onward.
And the repetition of that final line, and miles to go before I sleep.
Oh, so good.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It underscores that sense of duty, the long road ahead, leaving you pondering the balance between embracing the present and acknowledging, the demands of the future.
It's masterful how Frost can evoke such profound emotions and reflections with, such simple, evocative language.
And it's not just nature and personal emotions.
Yeah.
Frost also wove social commentary into his work.
Absolutely.
The Gift outright, for example, while seemingly celebrating American history, also kind of subtly critiques the darker aspects of westward expansion and the displacement of Native Americans.
Yeah, it's a reminder that Frost wasn't just a poet of, nature and personal introspection. He was deeply engaged with, the social and political landscape of his time. And that poem, often interpreted through like a purely patriotic lens,
Right.
reveals a much more nuanced perspective, I think, on American identity.
He wasn't afraid to grapple with those complexities, to acknowledge the darker side of the American story, even within a poem that's often seen as, celebratory.
Yeah.
Now let's delve into some of the more challenging aspects of Frost's character. The book explores his relationship with his biographer, Lawrence Compson,
Yeah.
which started with, like, admiration and eventually, kind of soured.
It's almost like a cautionary tale about hero worship.
Yeah.
Thompson initially viewed Frost as a father figure, but as he, dug deeper into the poet's life, uncovering flaws and contradictions,
Right.
their relationship became strained. And for Frost, who was so conscious of his public image, having his life scrutinized so closely must have been unsettling.
He also raises questions about the nature of biography itself.
Yeah.
Thompson's biography, while praised for its, thoroughness, has also been criticized for portraying Frost in an overly negative light. It makes you wonder how much, biographers' own perspective shapes the story they tell.
It's a reminder that biography is always an interpretation, shaped by the biographer's own biases and experiences. And in the case of Frost, who was so skilled at crafting his public persona, separating the man from the myth is a particularly challenging task.
You get a sense from Plunkett's biography that Frost was a man of contradictions.
For sure.
He could be charming and manipulative, capable of great kindness, and surprising cruelty.
And that complexity, is precisely what makes him such a fascinating subject. He defies easy categorization. He wasn't a simple hero or villain. He was, a human being full of flaws and contradictions, yet capable of extraordinary creativity and insight.
Right.
And that, I think, is what continues to draw us to his work.
We've talked about his poetry, his relationships, his struggles, his triumphs. But what about his, core beliefs?
Yeah.
What did Robert Frost ultimately believe in?
That's a question that scholars and critics have debated, for decades.
Right.
Frost was notoriously elusive when it came to explicitly stating, his beliefs.
Yeah.
He once said, I'm a Puritan, but not a go-getter.
Oh, interesting.
Which kind of hints at a belief in hard work and self-reliance, but not necessarily, in material success.
There's definitely a sense of independence and self-discovery that runs through, a lot of his work.
Absolutely. And he was also such a keen observer of human nature, fascinated by the complexities of human relationships and the choices we make in the face of uncertainty. His poetry often grapples with, those big questions.
Right.
About life and death, love and loss. But he rarely offers easy answers. Instead, he kind of invites us to contemplate those questions alongside him, to find our own meaning in the journey.
One thing that's undeniable is Frost's mastery of language.
Oh, yeah.
He could paint such vivid pictures with simple words, and his poems are filled with lines that just, stick with you.
It's that combination of simplicity and depth, I think, that makes his poetry so powerful.
Yeah.
He could speak to the everyday experiences of, ordinary people, while also touching on profound truths about the human condition. He was a master of capturing the essence of a moment, the feeling of a particular place, with just a few, carefully chosen words.
And he could be so funny, too, even when dealing with, these really serious themes.
Oh, yeah.
There's often, a twinkle in his eye,
Mm-hmm.
a sense that he doesn't take himself too seriously. Even when, exploring life's biggest questions.
That humor is an important aspect of his persona, I think.
Yeah.
It made him more approachable, more human, and it allowed him to connect with readers on a deeper level, to make them laugh even as he made them think.
And speaking of connections, his relationship with Ezra Pound, it took an interesting turn towards the end of his life.
Yeah.
Pound had been hospitalized for years due to mental illness,
Right.
and Frost, despite their, past differences,
Right.
became an advocate for his release.
It's a testament to the enduring power of their friendship, even after years of separation and divergent, artistic paths. And it's interesting to see how Frost, in his later years, seemed to soften his stance on Pound's more experimental poetry, recognizing its value even if it wasn't, his preferred style.
He even went so far as to say that poetry, not politics, should be the defining factor in judging an artist's worth.
Oh, wow.
A statement that was Quite controversial at the time.
It shows a certain magnanimity, I think, on Frost's part, a willingness to forgive and to recognize the inherent value of, artistic expression, even when it comes from someone with whom you have profound disagreements.
Frost's involvement in John F. Kennedy's presidential inauguration was another defining moment in his later career.
Oh, yeah.
His choice of the gift outright for the occasion sparked debate, with some seeing it as contradicting his more nuanced views on American history.
It's a complex situation.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have this poem, celebrating national unity and American exceptionalism. On the other hand, you have Frost's own awareness of, the darker chapters in that history.
Right.
It's possible to see his choice of poem as a gesture of reconciliation, a way of, bridging divides and celebrating a new era in American leadership. But it's also valid to question whether it truly, represented the full complexity of his views.
And the image of Frost at 86 years old, braving the cold and the glare of the sun to deliver that poem. It's such a powerful image.
Yeah.
It speaks to his enduring legacy as a poet who, transcended literary circles and became like a cultural icon.
It's a moment that encapsulates, I think, both his personal triumphs and the broader cultural significance of his work.
Right.
He wasn't just a poet. He was a voice for a generation,
Mm-hmm.
a symbol of American resilience and creativity.
Yeah.
And that legacy, it continues to inspire and challenge us today.
It's amazing to think that even, in his later years, Frost never stopped writing, never stopped exploring the depths of human experience through his poetry.
Right. His final years were marked by a mix of, accolades and personal struggles, and that persistent drive to create. He received numerous awards, including 4 Pulitzer Prizes, really cementing his place as one of America's most celebrated poets.
But it wasn't all, sunshine and roses, right? I mean, Plunkett doesn't shy away from the more difficult aspects of Frost's later life.
No, he doesn't. Frost faced health issues, the loss of many close friends and family members. Those final years were definitely challenging. Yet, despite those hardships, he continued writing and publishing poetry right up until his death in 1963 at the age of 88.
That's incredible, that kind of dedication to his craft, even in the face of, such adversity. It speaks volumes about his character, his resilience.
It really does. And one of his later poems, Directive, really struck me as I was reading the biography. It reads like a guide through a lost landscape, an invitation to reconnect with a childlike sense of wonder and to find solace amidst loss.
Almost like Frost, nearing the end of his own life, was offering a roadmap for navigating grief and finding meaning in the simple things.
Precisely. And that image at the end of the poem, a broken drinking goblet like the Grail, it suggests this quest for something beyond the material world, a search for spiritual fulfillment that persists even in the face of mortality.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the complexities of Frost's life, his relationships, his triumphs, his struggles, and the enduring power of his poetry. But what does it all mean? What can we, as readers and as individuals navigating our own journeys, take away from this exploration of Robert Frost?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is multifaceted, just like the man himself. For some, it might be the sheer beauty of his language, the way he could capture the essence of nature and the human heart with such precision and grace. For others, it might be his unwavering dedication to his craft, his willingness to keep writing and exploring, even in the face of personal hardship.
And what about the complexities of his character? We've talked about his contradictions, his capacity for both kindness and cruelty, his charm, and his manipulativeness. Do those aspects of his personality make his work more compelling, or do they make it harder to reconcile with his legacy?
That's a question worth pondering. I think it's important to acknowledge that Frost, like all of us, was a flawed human being. But I don't believe those flaws diminish his artistry. In fact, they might even enhance it. They make him more relatable, more human. They remind us that great art can emerge from imperfect lives, from messy, complicated experiences.
So we don't need to idolize him or put him on a pedestal. We can appreciate his genius while also acknowledging his flaws. We can learn from his struggles, be inspired by his resilience, and find solace in his words without feeling the need to condone every aspect of his behavior.
Exactly. And ultimately, I think that's one of the most valuable lessons we can take from engaging with any artist, any historical figure. The understanding that even the most celebrated individuals are human, with all the complexities and contradictions that entails.
And that embracing those complexities, both in ourselves and in the art we consume, can lead to a richer, more nuanced understanding of the world around us.
Absolutely. It allows us to move beyond simplistic interpretations, to see the shades of gray, the light and shadow that make up the tapestry of human experience.
So for our listeners, as you reflect on Robert Frost's life and legacy, what resonates most with you? What insights have you gained from this deep dive?
Perhaps you've been struck by the power of his words, the way he could evoke such vivid emotions with seemingly simple language. Or maybe you've been drawn to the complexities of his character, the contradictions that made him both relatable and enigmatic.
We explored how Frost's personal relationships, the love he shared with Eleanor, the loss he endured, and the challenges he faced as a father and a mentor shaped his work. Now consider this. Do you think a life of deep love is necessary to create truly profound art? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Whatever your takeaways, we hope this deep dive has left you with a renewed appreciation for Robert Frost, the man and the poet. His legacy is one of enduring beauty, profound insight, and a timeless reminder of the power of words to touch our hearts and minds.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Robert Frost's life and poetry. Be sure to share this episode with anyone who might enjoy exploring the human story behind this literary icon. Until next time, happy reading and keep those minds open.